At Consumer Cellular, you get the same exact coverage as the largest carriers, but for up to half the cost. Same thing, up to half the cost. Up to half the cost for the same thing. 50% the money for 100% the same thing. I hope I'm making myself clear. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Call us at 1-888-FREEDOM.
Half the cost savings based on cost of Consumer Cellular single-line 5GB data plan with unlimited talk and text compared to lowest cost single-line postpaid unlimited talk, text, and data plan offered by T-Mobile and Verizon May 2023.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. How are you, Kieran? Obviously, I'm very cheerful because it's been raining for 40 days and 40 nights, so I couldn't be more chipper. Well, I imagine Findley's not too happy with the weather, is he?
Oh, he loves the rain. He doesn't like going out for a wee, but you take him out for a walk and he's fine. He won't go out voluntarily, but yeah, once we're down the woods and he's out chasing deer and squirrels and God knows what else, he's perfectly happy.
Oh, you've got deer now, have you?
Yeah. We've had deer for a long time, but he looks at me when we see one. He looks at me and I look at him and I say, "Well, it's over to you now, mate." And he sort of half-heartedly trots towards them, and they run away. And he comes scampering back to me for a piece of sausage, as if he's sort of done it to protect me.
What do you mean it's over to you? You think it's like a Robin Hood movie that he's going to go and savage a massive, great big stag and bring it back for some stag ceviche? That'd be venison ceviche. Hark at us wittering on, Kieran. It's almost like we haven't been chosen by Radio Times as one of the hottest new pods of the year. Yes. Which we're very proud and very honoured to be Radio Times' Sports Podcast of the Year. But I think it says something for the demographic of the Radio Times readership, Kieran, that we're not even the oldest of the hottest new stars.
Brilliant.
Of the 10 other pods in different categories, 4 of them are hosted by people older than we are, which I found slightly disappointing. But anyway, let's get on and prove to our readers why we are Radio Times pick of the pod pickers. And that's one for the demographic. We were away when it started, Kieran, so let's have a little look at the Women's World Cup at the start of this episode. How is the money side of things panning out? It says here we've seen some teams, like Jamaica, for example, competing well, but with virtually no money behind them, which they made public before they come. But how's it pan out? Clearly, from the look of things, the football's been great and the crowds have been huge.
Yes, I think there are some positives. First of all, we give FIFA a bit of stick now and then, but the prize money is triple of the last Women's World Cup. So there's $150 million in total going out to the individual participating nations. Now that's about a third of the men's, and Gianni Infantino has said his long-term objective is to narrow the gap and ideally eliminate it altogether, which is laudable. But as you sort of hinted, there seems to be some issues with regards to the distribution of money to players. So the Nigeria coach has said, I think he's not been paid for 7 months. Some of the players haven't been paid for a long period of time. We've got the Lionesses put out on social media a fairly robust whinge, or not whinge, justifiable complaint about the allocation of bonuses for this competition. They said that last year, when England were hosting the competition, there were issues to do with bonuses and their relationship with the FA. So I think it blindsided the FA when they put out a collective concern about nothing's been finalised as yet. FIFA have said that the money is going directly to the players, or has to be evidence that it's gone directly to the players if it goes to the individual football associations. And this is something which has always concerned me, because this has been an issue with some of the men's World Cups historically, that individual football associations are not run with particularly a great commitment to transparency and good governance principles. And whilst that's not an issue as far as the Football Association is concerned, they've had 12 months to address the concerns of the players. There's no doubt that the profile of the women's game is much higher. Anybody that watched the match the other day, and Lauren James's absolutely amazing performance, was you start to do things which you enjoy doing, such as shouting at televisions. What other program has you shouting at the screen in the way that football does? And that was great. But the players clearly feel that, and it's not just England players, that they're not necessarily being treated particularly well by their football associations. But yeah, crowds looking good. Certainly, the viewing figures in Australia have been very high. I think there's around about 5 million watching the Matildas, and they were they could have spent their time crying watching the cricket if they'd so chosen. But fair play to the fans there. Lots of positives. It seems a pretty good competition. There's a few upsets. I think the Germany-Colombia match. What you want is 95th minute winners. That gets everybody excited. And the level of play has been good, and the level of excitement from watching it as a fan's been good as well.
Yeah, the USA nearly going out to Portugal, hitting the post in the last seconds. I'll tell you what other gets me shouting at the TV, Kieran. Only Connect. That gets me shouting at the TV. Basically shouting, what? Or get on with it, basically. Interesting, the Lionesses' bonus complaints, I thought they handled that very well, because the FA will be worried now, because basically what the Lionesses have said is we'll deal with this when this tournament is over.
Yes.
But they've let the FA know in no uncertain terms that once they've fulfilled their professional obligations, they want to know why this is happening. You mentioned the TV figures, Kieran. The TV deal was obviously a big topic ahead of the tournament. It's probably too early to tell how successful it's been here in terms of numbers, is it?
I think so. I mean, the first couple of matches were okay. I think the match against China will probably be slightly better. As England progress through the tournament, I think the numbers will increase exponentially, because we've got the start of the men's season as well. People are getting their football adrenaline back, and it's always good to get behind the flag.
Yeah, and I think the kickoff times will be slightly later, won't they, for the knockout game? So that will help viewing figures-wise. Well, that's good. It's been an exciting tournament. Hopefully the Lionesses can go further. A couple of things to catch up with, Kieran, from when we were away. We were only away for a couple of weeks, but a lot of things happened. We can't catch up with them all. But there's quite a few clubs we're going to be mentioning in the next 40, 50 minutes or so that have been on our mentioned too often list in the past year. But hopefully one of them, Charlton Athletic, we might be mentioning for a while.
Well, yes, a deal has gone through. So Thomas Sandgaard, of whom Charlton fans had big hopes, and we had big hopes as well, until we booked him to come on the show twice. On both occasions, he didn't bother to turn up, which I think is a bit unprofessional. But he did sort of see himself as a rock and roll individual, and I guess he thought that was rock and roll.
Well, Kieran, more for him, because rock and roll or not, he'll have been flicking through Radio Times this week.
That's
thinking,
right.
There's a PR boat I missed there, he'll be thinking as he strums his guitar while he's flicking through Radio Times, which is quite difficult to do.
Yes. So the club has been sold. I think it is the football club has been sold. I don't think the stadium's gone as well. That's a separate ongoing issue, to a company called SE7 Partners. And it very is much a case of partners. Now, front of house, a bit like Fred in First Dates, is our very good friend Charlie Methven. And he has said he's bought between, I think, 5 to 7% of the club. And he says, that's a lot of money for me, but also implying that there are some other partners involved in the acquisition, many from the States. who are seriously wealthy, i.e. trying to get the fans on side. Certainly the noises I've had from Charlton fans to date have been positives in the sense that they seem to think that the new owners are trying to put football people in football positions, which is to be welcomed. My only concern is, and we'll come round to this when we're looking at one of the other stories, is that if you have a handful of investors trying to get them all pointing in the same direction, especially when it comes to issues such as putting in additional funding for a club, can become more complex. And you've had that experience yourself at Palace when you kind of too many cooks spoil the broth. I've stated from day one from when we first met that in my view that the best form of ownership is benevolent dictator, because you've got one person making the decisions in the interests of the club as a whole. But trying to find that person it can be very challenging. So things appear to be positive. I've been in contact with our friends at the Charlton dossier, and they've sent me their updated dossier on the owners. And all I say was that the file was 8 meg. We're talking a big and beefy one. And boy, we're both from South London, aren't we, Kevin? Originally, and you still, of course. And the amount of work that they have gone into in terms of everybody connected with the takeover is forensic and ridiculously detailed. I'm just going to make sure I don't cross them, because I don't want the Kieran Maguire dossier produced by these people. We've all got skeletons. And I don't mind investigated by these guys. Boy, they've got everything. And what we've said between us, in the spirit of wanting all the best for Charlton, and they said, we're going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt. And again, fair play to Charlie Methven. He's met up with them. He's had a long conversation with them as well. That they seem to think that things have turned round, and they're looking forward to the future, which they haven't been able to do for a long period of time.
That is good. If Charlie Methven's met the Charlton dossier people, then I imagine we won't be hearing much from Charlie for the next year or so, which is probably good. Hasn't got quite the same dramatic effect, has it? In the old days, you would actually have a huge dossier that weighed about half a stone. You drop it on the desk and you go, look at that. And now you're going at 8 meg, and it's kind of for dramatic effect, not the same impact. Just a couple of things off the back of that. You mentioned the Palace ownership thing. We've been asked by Palace fans to look into that in more detail, so we will do that in the next couple of weeks. But very interestingly, that Texter gave an interview, very extensive interview to The Athletic, in which he said that he really regretted not buying Palace outright. He said at the time he was trying to raise the money to buy Benfica as well, hence the name of the company, Eagles Holdings. But he ended up with 40%. And it was a very amicable interview in which he spoke quite highly of Steve Parish, but did say he couldn't understand why he owned 40% of the football club, but seemed to have zero influence in the running of the football club, which is something we will look at properly, Kieran. It's starting to reach that stage where it was funny 6 months ago, but us Palace fans are starting to get worried about it a little bit. Secondly, Fred from First Dates is the coolest bloke I've ever met in my life.
Oh, really? You met him? The Baroness will want to interrogate you about that. He's on her list.
She can interrogate me. She can interrogate me as well if she wants to, Kieran. Whether he'd be quite as cool if he was from Croydon, I don't know. But he is seriously cool. Another name on our list, Kieran, that we have been speaking about too often is Reading Football Club. And there's a rather plaintive press release from the club and its owners today. And I still, having read it several times, still don't know whether there's any good news in there for Reading fans or not.
Yeah, I mean, we're recording this at 9 o'clock on Wednesday night, and I'm on Radio Berkshire first thing tomorrow morning trying to explain it. And I suspect even after our conversation and having read it as often as you have, and we'll read it a few times more overnight, I'm not sure I'm going to be any the wiser either. So I think this is potentially on the back of, we spoke to the Sell or Die campaign recently, and we had them on the show. I think it has slowly filtered through to the ownership that fans aren't very happy and they're going to be protesting. And I think the owner wants to try to save face to a certain extent by saying, look, I'm taking notice. I am trying to progress something. So first of all, he says, I'm willing to take on some investors and if they want to put money into the club. And I'm going, well, if they want money in the club, surely the investors will want something in return. Otherwise, they'll end up like John Textor. Wallet lighter, but influence no greater. And then there was sort of a rambling bit about the owner saying, COVID. I'm going, well, I'm not convinced about COVID's not as important in 2023 as it was in 2020 and 2021. And I appreciate things are slightly different in China with regards to the response of the authorities there. But that seemed quite lame, given the supposed wealth of the owners. So it was a bit strange. And then he said, which sort of really ground my particular gears, where he says, and with regards to the money owing to HMRC, the owner is going to personally ensure that tax is paid. Okay, well, hold on. You deducted that tax because it's not, PAYE tax is in the main, it's an employee tax paid by the employee, and the employer simply collects the tax on behalf of HMRC. So it's not coming out of your pocket. What has happened is that you've deducted the tax from staff pay, you've deducted the tax in respect of sales, which have been vatable, and you've spent it on other things. So, don't try to make yourself out to be a shining knight in all of this. Fans aren't as dumb as we're often made out to be. So I think that cheesed me off, and it cheesed off some of the fans as well. I thought it was a fairly lily-livered press release, in the sense that, Christ, the season's starting this weekend. We're hearing about fan protests. What do we think will calm them down a bit? And I suspect this press release won't.
Well, there are two things about it that rang alarm bells for me, Kieran. The fact that he was clearly implying that there are no cash flow problems, but he's just had trouble moving cash from place to place because of COVID and the current state of Chinese politics, which didn't seem to make any sense to me. In this age of electronic banking, I don't see how you can't just move money from it. But also the fact that he was actually asking for a pat on the back when he said, "Don't worry, everyone's been paid this month." Yeah. Which is like, if you have to point out the fact, as soon as you say "don't worry," your first thing is, why is he telling us this? If there was nothing to worry about, we just assume everyone's being paid. That's a little bit that worried me the most, that he said, no, everyone's been paid this month, because that kind of implies that A, we know that not everyone has been paid in the past, but B, it's that maybe they're not going to get paid again. So I worry that Reading, Charlton are off that list temporarily, or hopefully permanently, please God, but Reading don't look like they're off that list anytime soon. And we've got another club coming up that are in a similar situation. But let's have some different news first, Kieran. You talked about fan protests. We've had some news from the Championship just in the last couple of days from several clubs in the Championship for which the fans would be delighted, I imagine. And it seems that this is one of the first bits of really positive news, especially about one club, Leeds United, that we've spoke about in a long time. Yes,
and I think you've got to give credit to Leeds United. They've always been, they spent many years in the Championship between 2003 and when they've just been promoted. And they were always the team that, if you were going to have tiered pricing, when Leeds United came to town, it was an opportunity to try to extract as much money from their fans as possible. Yeah. And because they were travel in numbers, you know that they would sell out the away allocation regardless. So they've got an agreement with Cardiff that they're going to charge Cardiff £21, and Cardiff are going to charge them £21, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think they've got a similar agreement with Birmingham City. Not quite sure of the price, so that's good. They're effectively saying, don't fleece our fans, and we will respond to yours. And this has come up from one of the I think it's called FB Away Days Twitter feed. They've gone through every single set of ticket prices for away fans, and we've got used in the Premier League to paying £30, and it's still a sizable amount of money. Let's be honest about that. But the Championship is starting this weekend. It's starting at Hillsborough on a Friday night. Sheffield Wednesday hosting Southampton. Now, if you're a Southampton fan doing that when the match is live on TV on a Friday night, hat is tipped in your direction. Hat is not tipped in the direction of Delphine Chansiri, the owner of Sheffield Wednesday, who is charging Southampton fans £36, and this is for second-tier football. And he's charging his own fans between £37 and £48. £48 to see second-tier football. I find that staggering. And I know that it'll say, well, most fans have got season tickets and so on. But even so, it does seem that some people seem to have lost touch with reality with regards to the prices being expected. And I know that in other forms of entertainment, if you're trying to get tickets to see Taylor Swift or the Foo Fighters next year, you're paying an absolute fortune, and then you end up having to go and pay even more on the secondary sites and say, well, why can't we as football clubs do similar? Because I'm not seeing Taylor Swift 23 times in a year, and if I was, I think the Baroness might be having a word with me.
I think she would know, wouldn't she, the Baroness?
Yeah, I suspect so. Yeah.
I mean, you're a plausible denier, Kieran, but I think you wouldn't get away with that 21 times a season, would you?
Yeah.
Where are you off to tonight? You're not getting to see Taylor Swift again, no, darling. The trouble is, Kieran, Southampton fans will be there. We've discussed this before. The only way you're going to stop this exploitation of fans, which is what it is when Sky say to the clubs, look, we're not having empty away ends. It just, the product isn't as good. We sell this product around the world on the atmosphere, on the tension, the fact that there's noise from all four sides of the ground. But Southampton fans will turn up and they will pay upwards of £200 probably to do so in terms of travel, time off work, who knows what. And the thing is, I think sometimes we forget, Kieran, of all the financial mismanagement we talk about on this pod, all the financial mismanagement that keeps us going. It's that weekly exploitation of genuine fans that we sometimes forget, and that should be front and centre of everything we talk about. Because I thought that was shocking, Kieran. I mean, the thing is, Sheffield Wednesday fans probably won't notice it because they'll be buoyant after their promotion. I mean, Southampton fans are grumpy enough as it is. I mean, that's a long journey.
Yeah,
that's a long journey with the hump, knowing that you've spent £38 on a ticket and starting a new season in a difficult league with a very difficult away game. And it's just, I don't understand if the Premier League, and the irony is, Kieran, in the Premier League, we're so used to the amounts of money that's talked about in the Premier League that we probably wouldn't really, you'd go, all right, £40 for a Premier League product. That's annoying, but I'd pay it. But if the Premier League can sort out £30 ticket cap, then the rest of football should be able to do the same. Exactly. It should be £20. It should be £20. But no, it's just, I think that's an outrageous thing they're doing there, and I hope they have a rethink about that. I really do. We've talked about the World Cup, Kieran. I'm fairly sure, Kieran, I've said this sentence at least 5 times already this year. The producer guy informs me that this is a new one, but it says here on the script sent to me by producer guy that UEFA have announced a new format for its competitions from 2020. How many more new formats are we going to have, Kieran, before 2024? I'm really looking forward to 2024 now, just so I can work out how well all these new formats are going to work.
Yeah, I guess this is what you might call a finesse. of the new
Ooh.
format.
Ooh,
Not a word.
who's been going?
Yes.
Someone's been going to posh restaurants, haven't they? I
Yeah,
love
next
the
to
finesse.
ceviche.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll have the finesse of lamb. Thank you very much. And then I'll have the stag ceviche.
It's going to go down well with the vegan contingent, isn't it? So we've got coming in 2024 3 times 36 clubs. So presently we have 3 times 32 clubs. But it's not just an expansion of the Champions League. It also appears to be an expansion of the Europa League and the Conference as well. There's going to be, and this is where it starts to get a bit strange. You've got 36 clubs in each of the competitions, and they all form a table, and then they play 8 matches, and the matches are sort of drawn in lots. So you get from effectively that the clubs are seeded, and you get one match against a top tier team and one match against a middle ranking team, and so on. And the way that it works is that the top 8 are going to qualify for the knockout. Positions 9 to 24 are then going to have playoffs to see the winners of those playoffs will join the top 8 in a knockout round of 16. And if you finish in positions 25 to 36, tough potatoes. But then there seems to be sort of one subtle change. Now, I don't know whether I've misread this. I managed to get hold of the document. It now seems that we could have automatically from at least one league, I think it is going to be just from one league, where the top 5 qualify for the Champions League. Now, whether that league's going to be the Bundesliga or the La Liga, or you would expect it to be the Premier League, because if you take a look at recently, we had Manchester City and Chelsea in the 2021 final, and we had Liverpool in the 2022 final. We've had Manchester City in the 2023 final. So the Premier League would appear to be the best performing league. Then there's going to be 2 teams coming from the league which performed the best in the previous year. And I think there's going to be 1 additional team coming from Bosnia, or so the highest ranking FIFA league. So that does appear to be a slight change upon where we were. Then in terms of the matches themselves, because there's going to be a hell of a lot of matches. If you think that we've got the new format as far as the EFL matches are concerned, kicking in, I think that's from 2024, lots more matches. There's going to be matches taking place practically every day of the week, including, as far as UEFA is concerned, we're now going to have games taking place in January, which we've not had before, because places such as the Bundesliga have had their winter break. So the winter break's not going to apply for Bundesliga teams, which seems a little bit strange. And it looks like there's going to be Champions League matches also taking place on a Thursday. I think there's going to be one sort of exclusive week where Champions League is going to take place on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and there'll be no Europa League matches, and there'll be no Europa Conference. So I've seen this sort of diary, which was sort of put in front of me. I went, holy moly. Yeah, that is, it's going to be wall-to-wall football. And I guess UEFA are confident that it's going to deliver in terms of viewing figures. We've got to give this new format a try. There's no point writing it off, but there's an awful lot more matches, and you add to that the increased matches taking place at the World Cup. You add to that the FIFA World Club Championship, and nobody's consulted the players in any of this.
Yeah, well, we saw how unhappy Guardiola was at the end of the Champions League final about the amount of football his players were getting through. Have the broadcasters been behind this new format, Kieran, or is this UEFA assuming that the broadcasters will be happy with the new format?
Well, the Champions League sells. The Champions League sells in Europe, it sells in Asia, it sells in America. It's a very, very popular competition. I think what they'd like to do ideally is to have some matches, especially as you get further into the competition, taking place at weekends, because from a timetabling point of view, if you've got matches taking place at 8 or 9 p.m. in Europe, then that's 2 or 3 a.m. in the Asian markets, which is going to have a negative impact upon viewing figures. Whereas if you have them taking place on weekends at 2 and 4 p.m., then you could get even better deals in some of the international markets. So, the broadcasters have probably been saying we're a bit fed up with the group stages, and I think most people, in all probability, who the two teams that are going to go through are going to be in most of the groups. So they've decided to give it some change.
Can I tell you, Kieran, the little tweak I would make to finesse the format of the competitions? Let's say the Champions League. If you wanted to finesse the format of the Champions League, the way I would do it would be by getting a big velvet bag, and in that bag I would put 32 balls that have a number on them that relate to the name of the team that won the title in each of those countries. And then what would happen is you'd pull the balls out, and the two teams would then play against each other, and then the teams that won that would play against... In other words, Kieran, what I'm saying is you'd have a knockout tournament. Now, that's how you finesse it, and that's how you make it proper, and that's how you get people watching it. This is just... I'm coming to the conclusion that UEFA are doing all these things, and still they're keeping Crystal Palace out of Europe deliberately. just gaslighting us, Kieran. Another team we have talked about a lot, Kieran, without... It's sort of been skirting round the naughty step, if you like, without ever there being too much indication that there's anything really going wrong. But that could be about to change. It's Peterborough United, and there are two stories that have come out this week, which are, well, one slightly more worrying than the other, but they're both interesting stories given their current financial situation.
Yes. First of all, there was a story in The Athletic from Matt Slater, and it was Matt Slater who interviewed John Textor, which was a really good article in my view. And we've had Matt on the show. I've spoken to Matt on many an occasion. He's a first-rate investigative journalist. And the article was, could Peterborough end up in administration, ? And I've had some conversations with Matt, of which the content can't go out on the show. I've also had some contact with a Peterborough United fan who is to Peterborough United what the Charlton dossier people are to South East London. So somebody's done an awful lot of forensic work. The reason why the question has been asked is that there are new owners for the past few years in respect of Peterborough United. One of those owners appears to owe money to a Canadian investment fund, which has not been paid. The Canadian investment fund is unhappy, so therefore the company they're connected to is unhappy. I don't think there's a lot of love between all of the owners. And we've also got this separate issue that the stadium is in receivership, which is similar to administration. So it's only sort of a minor technical difference. And the owner, the front of house man, Darren McAntony, who is he's from the Simon Jordan School of Modesty, is saying nothing to worry about. And I'm going, well, I think you're being a bit overly dismissive here. There is clearly some disputes. People are not getting around the table and resolving disputes. And therefore it's going through legal process, which A, is tying up money, and B, you can never be too certain of the ultimate outcome. And we've had some reassuring voices, that ultimately, yes, this is a private dispute, but all of the owners want what's best for Peterborough United. But when it comes to money, you're all of a sudden, the people who have not been connected to the club for that long will actually find that, given a choice between their love of money and their love of Peterborough United, I suspect they'll probably opt for the former, regardless of the implications of the club. So I don't think we are close to administration just yet, but it clearly is an unsettling position for the club, the fans. And I've said this before, Peterborough United were more than happy to go to the fans with the posh bond. And I know it plays a decent rate of interest, but ultimately it's an unsecured loan. And my concern would be that if it's an unsecured loan, if the club does go into administration, then you are last in the queue. And it's a long queue.
Yeah, well, let's not speculate about something which may not happen, Kieran. My worry is that our previous experience shows us that when we talk about these things, they have bloody happened, which is the annoying thing. But the second issue with Peterborough United is one I didn't know that a club was able to do this, and it involves their broadcasting rights.
That's right. Clubs are allowed to arrange commentary on their home matches with whoever they choose, ultimately. Now, traditionally, this is where BBC local radio has excelled because, I think we're both old enough and been around the block enough to know that there is a BBC radio station for the vast majority of locales. And BBC Cambridgeshire has had the contract historically. There's also a separate issue that the BBC are merging many of their local radio stations. I know quite a few journalists, and they're saying, "Well, we're having to apply for old jobs, and the jobs are being cut," and that's part of a broader issue with regards to the funding of the BBC, which for another podcast. But Peterborough is saying we are going to not renew our contract with BBC Cambridgeshire. And instead, we are going to introduce Posh Plus for the audio commentary. And first reaction is, well, they say it's going to be a better service. It's going to be a more in-depth service. That could be very positive. Let's give it some credibility. And then they say we want £5 a match. And I'm going, well, hold on. Let's just think about the demographic of the people who are most likely to be listening to this service. And those people are likely to be elderly. They're likely to be those people who perhaps can't afford to go to too many matches. Cost. We mentioned before, cost of transport, cost of catering, cost of a ticket, and so on. They might be infirm or frail, and listening to your local football team is one of the things which puts a smile on people's faces, and they engage with what's going on. So I think to charge them a £5 a match, and I think you can get it slightly cheaper if you get a season ticket, is very disappointing. If Peterborough United's finances, and remember this is the side which sold Tony to Brentford, has done very well in the transfer market, moving players on, and fair play to them for that. If they're having to chase after a £5 here and a £5 there, that again does get you slightly nervous.
Well, it does. See, it was my understanding, Kieran, and again, my lack of willingness to do research is playing against me here, Kieran. But it was always my understanding that the radio commentaries formed part, albeit a less important part, of the BBC broadcasting deal with clubs. And whilst I know that a lot of clubs, especially at a lower level, do have their own radio stations, I always thought you had a choice. You could either tune into your club radio station or you had BBC Local Radio. I didn't know you could opt out. But what I don't understand, as you say, is why would you want to opt out? We know from experience that local radio and BBC, their coverage of their local clubs is very good. They've always got ex-player pundits. They've always got good up-and-coming commentators. It's probably more biased than Five Live would want. So it's not that much different to a club broadcast anyway. But you can't help but thinking you won't get a product that's as good on Posh Plus as you would on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. And you can't help thinking, well, your fans, it's one thing charging the fans who can get to games money, but now you're trying to find more ways of charging the fans who can't get to games money. And as you implied, the fans who can't get to games are the ones who tend to be elderly, infirm, or too young to travel anyway. So it doesn't sit right. Again, we will be in touch with Peterborough. We always say this, and we always mean it. We will be in touch with Peterborough because we would love to put these questions to them to hear what they have to say. But no breath is being held. I would end that sentence with, which is good because I was running out of breath anyway. I started that sentence without realising how long it was going to be, Kieran. I didn't take a deep enough breath. It's news day, so we might as well strike off our normal Wigan story. It's only a matter of time, along with the independent regulator. It's very high on our bingo card. So this week's Wigan story, Kieran?
Right. We had this discussion a few weeks ago with regards to the late payment of pay and where this would leave an individual from a contractual point of view. Well, it looks as if, because we couldn't work out what the solution was, it looks as if a couple of Wigan players have either listened to the show or have taken advice, probably from somebody who knows far more about this than we do. And they've said because of an effective breach of contract by the club, and it seems a bit of a shame to a certain extent because we've got new owners coming in, they have decided to move elsewhere. And on the back of that they've effectively handed in their notice and they're going to find employment elsewhere. I think some Wigan fans are disappointed, but I think that there are two sides to every coin, as we know. And from the players' point of view, was that they've had a lot of broken promises from old owners with regards to being paid on a regular basis. So let's face it, Wigan have been through quite a few sets of owners in recent years. So therefore, why should we trust the new owners? Because the last new owners were not very good at keeping to the word. And I sincerely hope and believe that the new guy, he's a local lad and he's going to move things forwards, and that'll be absolutely fantastic. But players have got mouths to feed, they've got bills to pay, and they've got careers where they want to be paid at the end of the month. And it's a bit like the Reading situation. It should not be seen as a positive that people are being paid on time. It should be seen as a norm.
Yeah, if there are any other Wigan players listening to this, or any players of any other club listening to this, for the love of God, don't take our advice on anything you do in your career. I'm paranoid enough about the responsibility we have of getting facts right without thinking that people are making career-based decisions based on something you and I half-heartedly say on a Thursday. This is no surprise, Kieran, but hopefully, as you say, it won't be happening again because the new owners will be sensible, financially solvent, and open and honest in all their dealings. Yeah. I have got my fingers crossed. Now, Hartlepool United have delayed publishing their accounts again, and I'm guessing, Kieran, it's the word again that makes this a story.
Yes. Hartlepool have moved to my irritating step. I've got a naughty step and I've got an irritating step. Anybody who plays the system the way that they have, and then I wrote back from that. I'm talking about the club. It's not a club. It's the club owner. Okay. Yeah. Raj, you know what you know what you've done. You know why you're doing it. So initially, and for people not familiar with legislation, is that the position is that you have a financial year end and you have to publish your accounts 9 months after that date. So Hartlepool United used to have a 30th of June year end, which would have meant that they would have to publish their accounts by the 31st of March 2023. They then shifted their year end a couple of years ago from June to July, which means they've got another 30 days. Now, people say, well, it's only Hartlepool United. Well, to a Hartlepool United fan, that's important. Less transparency, less information. And what you can do, you can apply to Companies House and you can say, look, we've got a couple of problems. We've got new auditors, we've had a change in the accounting systems, new owners have come in, something like that. And you can apply to Companies House and they will give you a 3-month extension. And quite a few clubs have played this particular card, including Sheffield Wednesday, who are also on my naughty step for something we've already discussed. And Companies House, I think they don't tend to kick up too much of a fuss. So that meant that Hartlepool United had a further 3 months, so their 30th of June 2022 accounts didn't have to be published until the 30th of June 2023. And then we come to my favourite section number of Companies Act 2006. It's Section 442, which as a football fan, although Todd Bowley calls it Section 443. And this is a really weird piece of legislation, and it says that if you change your year-end date by 1 day, you can have yet another 3-month extension. So what Hartlepool have done is that they changed their year-end from the 30th of June to the 29th of June 2022, and now we're not going to see anything until the end of September. I've got spreadsheets which are incomplete as a result of this, but also I think it's a really insidious, manipulative, seedy way to behave. It's using the rules, and and people say, well, hold on, football fans, they're always moaning about something. Football fans, if you buy a season ticket, you are a creditor of that football club because you have given money in good faith in advance and you've not got anything back in return, and you've bought your season ticket in March or April to not see matches which aren't going to kick off the following season. You are therefore a creditor of that football club. And I think if the football club genuinely gave 2 hoots about you as a fan, they'd at least have the decency to show this is the state of the club's finances. Thank you very much for your money. We really appreciate it. So, yeah, poor show.
First of all, Ken, I found it rather chilling the way you started that by saying, Hartlepool, you know what you've done. That was that's echoes of Uncle Terry. That's a door being knocked and somebody opening it and going, oh my God, it's Uncle Terry. What does he want? And Uncle Terry going, you know why I'm here. It's no wonder your students are kept in line, Kieran. That's all you have to do is look up, raise an eyebrow, and say, you know what you've done. Two things then, Kieran. You say it's a way of playing the system, which almost implies that it's within the rules, and well, it is within the rules. But why would you want to play the system? If you see what I mean, what do Hartlepool, or rather Hartlepool's owner, get out of playing the system? And secondly, then that Section 442, does that mean you could constantly just keep changing the year-end date? Or are there limits on that? Because it strikes me that really is a way of playing the system. If you can just say, no, we're knocking it back. Or, legally, are you allowed to just constantly change the year-end date?
You can do it every year and change it by 1 day. And if you're working in retail, without wanting to go into the retail industry accounting 52 weeks approach to life, there is a legitimate reason for doing it. You can't constantly get an extra 3 months and next 3 months that you never publish. You can only do it effectively once a year. So that's what's done. As for why you'd want to do it, well, I just take the view if you've got nothing to hide nothing. So therefore the club has some reason, and people say, well, the owner is putting the club up for sale. If the owner has put the club up for sale, then I, as a potential buyer, would want to see the 2023 accounts, let alone the 2022 ones. So, it's not it's not a legitimate excuse to say that the club is in negotiation for sale and therefore we are going to delay publication, because it has no impact upon the things whatsoever. You've got up-to-date bank accounts, you've got up-to-date management accounts, you've got up-to-date financial systems in operation at all times, and it's a smokescreen, and that's what I don't like. And Hartlepool have had a few ups and downs, we both love Jeff Stelling, and he's entitled, just as everybody else, to know exactly what's going on at the club, as do all the other fans.
Yeah, see, he's somebody else I wouldn't get on the wrong side of either. Jeff Stelling. Oh yeah, he comes across amiable, but there's a touch of the Roy Hodgson about him. I wouldn't look him directly in the eye. I'd make sure I stirred his tea the right way. A lovely chap. Seriously, I'm aware now that I've got a certain tone of voice that implies that he's not. He is. He's a really nice bloke, but you have to get a certain steeliness to you when you've been looking after Paul Merson for 10 years.
Yes.
And trying to make sure that sorted ex-footballers are ready and waiting when the cameras are going to turn to them. Sheffield Wednesday are on your irritating step. There's two more stories about Sheffield Wednesday, Kieran. I don't know whether they're going to move them up the ladder or down the snake. The first one is about tickets as well.
Yes. A couple of years ago, Sheffield Wednesday announced a 10-year season ticket scheme, and then that was closed down. And by all accounts, it's been reopened again. And it's an interesting one in that you get your 10-year season ticket, but the 10 years only starts the first season in which Sheffield Wednesday are in the Premier League. Now, I think it's 23 years that Sheffield Wednesday have been in the Premier League. So you are taking, you could get 30 or 40 years for this. So if you've got some spare money, then perhaps you might be interested in it. And, it's cash for the club. But then things start to get just a little bit weird. The price of one of these 10-year season tickets is between £5,500 to £8,000. So, Sheffield's a good, solid working class city. Hillsborough's one of those away grounds which I love going to, and you're always made pretty welcome, in the pubs around the city. It's a great city to visit on a variety of levels.
Great music city.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then it says you can't pay using a debit card or a credit card. I.e., they expect you to pony up there with cash. And I'm going, well, I wouldn't, and I'm not casting any aspersions about the fine citizens of Sheffield. I wouldn't be wanting to wander around the streets of Sheffield with between £5,500 and £8,000 of cash in my wallet. You'd have to get 50s first of all. And when was the last time you saw somebody with a 50?
Fair point.
It just seems a bit strange. I know you can probably do an approved bank transfer, but apparently the debit and credit card companies have said we're not willing to accept such transactions. And I think the reason for that is that if you bought, my knowledge of credit card law is not as good as it used to be. When I used to be quite hot on it when I worked in the insolvency profession, because it was quite a big issue. But the rule used to be that if you bought something on a credit card and it wasn't delivered, then the credit card company was liable to pay you back. So if I was a credit card company, I'd say, well, there is a chance that Sheffield Wednesday could go into administration in 3 or 4 years' time, for all we know. And that means we'd have to give refunds of 6 years' worth of season ticket. Or, in fact, we could have to give refunds of the whole thing, because if Sheffield Wednesday haven't been in the Premier League, then in theory, all of the money that's owed back. So you can understand it from the card merchant point of view. But it does just seem a strange thing to do. But God knows how much Delphine Chansiri, if he's still owning the club, will be charging away fans in 10 years' time.
Can I just clarify this, Kieran? And firstly, I'll start by saying the only thing I can tell you about my credit card is that it's locked in a drawer in Bobby Number's office, where I can't get to it. So let me get this straight, Kieran, because I'm confused by this story. So I could give tomorrow. This is obviously hypothetical for so many reasons, but I could give Sheffield Wednesday £8,000 tomorrow, and if Sheffield Wednesday were promoted to the Premier League next year, I then have a season ticket for 10 years at Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, but you get 3 seasons until your 10 years kick in.
Okay, right. So okay. So, but technically, then I could be getting 10 years of Premier League football for £8,000.
Yeah,
which on the face of it is doing the maths very quickly in my head, mental arithmetic wise, which is not wise. And on the face of it, that's not too bad. But on the other hand, if Sheffield Wednesday aren't in the Premier League, I've basically just given them £8,000.
But you've got if during the rest of your lifetime, let's say that you live for another 30 years, if Sheffield Wednesday do not get to the Premier League, you get to watch Sheffield Wednesday for 30 years. Because
I see.
You've got free tickets until they get promoted.
Sorry, that's where I'm getting confused. Sorry, I thought the idea was it only kicked in if they were I understand.
The countdown kicks in when they hit the Premier League.
I see, yes. Okay. All right. So that does make sense. But you're still asking people. The chances are, I would guess Sheffield Wednesday are more likely to be in the Premiership than League One next season. But you're still asking people to take a big punt on where Sheffield Wednesday are playing their football in 5 seasons' time, aren't you? And as you say, you're hoping that the club will still be in existence. Please, of course, it will. But it's like you say, it's a lot of money to ask people to pay. People, in my experience, people are struggling to pay for one season's ticket all in one lump sum. And especially if you can't do it on your credit card, it's hard. And the second story, Kieran, is about Wednesday's new front of shirt sponsorship deal, and there seems to be some confusion about that.
Yes, this is a front of shirt deal with an organisation called AUP, what I can make out, which instantly takes me back to an edition of The Goodies, and Eggy Thump, which again appealing to the kids in our demographic. So this is a front of shirt deal, and I think it's worth. It looks like it's worth £560,000, and this organisation called IUP appear to be controlled by another company called WANdisco, and WANdisco said, "Hold on, nobody's told us that one of our companies." So there's a lot of confusion. There's a gentleman called Dave Richards involved, and I don't know whether this is the same Dave Richards who was involved at Leicester City a few years ago. I genuinely don't know. But yes, the parent company seems to be unaware of what's been taking place. I believe Dave Richards is a Sheffield Wednesday fan. The club has done absolutely nothing wrong. So whilst I've had a bit sniffy about them on a couple of other stories, the club has entered into this in good faith as far as they're concerned. They've launched the shirt. Presumably they've received some of the money, if not all of the money. But where this leaves the people who are ultimately responsible for paying the money appears to be a bit of a conundrum.
What sort of product is AUP, Kieran?
I think it's some sort of online issue. It's got some funky design. Funky logos and Sheffield don't go together, in my opinion, anyway.
And also interesting to say, £560,000. I mean, that's a lot. The numbers that we bandy around in the Premier League, as we're about to discover, are huge compared to that. I would have thought for a Championship team with Sheffield Wednesday's profile that they'd be asking more than £560,000.
No, I'd say that's actually quite a good deal.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, Leeds will get a decent price because we know that Leeds will be the most popular team as far as Sky are concerned when it comes to live broadcasts. But I know some clubs are on a fraction of what Sheffield Wednesday will be only if that is the price for the year.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, Sheffield Wednesday are on a fraction of what Man United have agreed with Adidas this week.
Yes. In 2015, Manchester United signed a 10-year deal with Adidas for what was then a world record, I believe, £750 million. And at the time, people started doing the sums and say, Adidas have overpaid. And I did sort of contact one of our people in the sportswear apparel or athleisure market. That's another word of the day. And they said, yeah, we think they're losing money on it, but it's Manchester United, and people are prepared to overpay to be connected to Manchester United. Well, if they overpaid in 2015 at £750 million, they have now renewed for a further 10 years with a £900 million deal, which is kicking in in 2025. And you go, yeah, that is an awful lot of money. And I do remember when the £750 million deal, I went on to BBC Northwest Telly to talk about the deal, and somebody said, do you think we could have £100 football shirt coming along? And I scoffed. And I think I was wrong in scoffing, because the shirts this season for Manchester United are £80. If you want a name and a number, it's 95. And then when you move to the pitch-ready version, I think you could be looking at the 125 quid for a shirt name and number.
Jesus.
And again, you talk to people in the industry and they say, well, you're paying an extra 30 quid for the shirt. How much of that is going in improved material? And they will say, yeah, £2.
Yeah, of course.
People are prepared to pay it.
I believe, Kieran, there's a story bubbling under about Adidas and the supply of women's kits as well. But I think we're going to have to look at that in a future pod, because it's just something that we've seen on their social media, and we need to look into it a bit closer before we talk about it properly. 2 more stories to go, Kieran, and we pretty much started the pod by talking about people being unhappy with ticketing prices, and we're pretty much closing the pod with people being unhappy about ticket prices, and this time it's Newcastle United fans.
Yes, this is a announcement by Newcastle United Supporters Trust, and I think they quite rightly highlighted a concern. Now, tickets to see Newcastle United this season are going to be difficult to come by. So like many clubs, they've got their season tickets, they cap the number of season tickets, and there's a reason why clubs do it, because people say, well, if we've got huge demand, why not have 45,000, 47,000 season tickets at St James's Park? It's because you make more money out of tourists. You make more money out of people that only attend once a year. Because if you think about it, you work out your season ticket price, you divide by 19, that's how much you're paying per ticket. You compare that to how much you're paying for an individual match ticket, and the difference can be quite staggering. So as far as the Newcastle situation is concerned, first of all, you have to buy a membership, and that membership gives you the right to apply. Doesn't guarantee you a ticket, gives you the right to apply in a queue to buy a ticket, and you'll pay a few quid for that. And then, as the trust rightly said, but you don't know how much you're paying. I think you could pay up to £78 for an individual ticket. You simply apply for a ticket. You're playing Bournemouth at home, or Palace at home, or Brighton at home, or Manchester United at home. You apply for a ticket for that match, and then the club effectively allocates you the ticket and the ticket price. So you're applying blind, and I think the Newcastle new owners have done an awful lot to engage with the fan base, to give a bit of hope for the fan base. A tremendous achievement last year in qualifying for the Champions League. They've been making some big money signings, and they might be saying, well, look, we've been spending an awful lot of money. We expect you to chip in as well. But first of all, I think the Newcastle United owners do have the resources to do this, whereas it's far more difficult for individual fans. But to be buying a ticket and not knowing how much you're paying is very, very strange.
It'd be interesting, Kieran, as an experiment, wouldn't it, to go back to those days when you had, not that long ago, when you still had one turnstile open on match days for cash payers, basically. It'd be interesting to see how long the queue would be at St James's Park if there was just one turnstile for cash payers, because I'm guessing that people would be getting there 48 hours beforehand to get in. I suppose, even Newcastle fans will say it's a horrible way of putting it. They're victims of their own success, aren't they? I mean, this inevitably comes with any club who's having the best 2 seasons they've had for a long, long time, and it looks like that's going to continue. And of course, that attracts fans that haven't been to St James's Park ever, who are going to be just as unhappy about not going to be able to get in on a match day. But that's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, isn't it, I suppose, Kieran?
It is, and you go back a couple of years and you look at all of the gaps on the terraces under the Mike Ashley ownership, and we're not here to slate Mike Ashley, but clearly there were things that could have been done which weren't done during that particular period of ownership, and the fans became increasingly unhappy. So yeah, they are victims of their own success. We've always known that the St James's Park, even at 52,000, it's not matching the potential level of ticket sales. I think the new owners have bought a piece of land surrounding the ground, which would give the opportunity to extend that. And it's certainly a club which can easily deal with 60,000 plus.
Yeah, the trouble is, while they are extending it, then there are even fewer fans who can get in for that 3 years while they do it. I don't think Newcastle fans would mind if we were here to slag off Mike Ashley, Kieran. I think they'd be quite happy if we had a 5-minute free go, but we've gone over the hour, so perhaps we should get to our last story. And our last story, Kieran, is good news for football fans in the UK and Ireland.
Yes, UK and Ireland have been granted by UEFA, unopposed, the rights to host the 2028 European Championships. I've just worked out how old I will be. I'm trying to... I mean, it's a terrible thing for me to say, and this is where the Baroness says, I am strange. I'm in my 60s, but I don't know how old I am when I retire, because I've never bothered thinking about it. And I speak to all of my mates who say, well, we're retiring at such and such a year, and I don't even know when my statutory retirement age is, so I may have retired by then.
You can retire when you want from the freelance, but I think you'll be kicked out before you retire, Kieran. I would guess they'll have to prise your cold fingers off the mantelpiece. If there is there a mantelpiece at Liverpool University? And also, Kieran, let's face it, in Radio Times years, we're teenagers.
That's true. That is true, yes.
Compared to most of the people reading that article yesterday, we're spring chickens.
Yes.
We'll still be in our 60s, Kieran.
We're still in our 60s. Yes, we'll be sticking in our 60s. So this appears to be a bit of a quid pro quo with Italy and Turkey, because Turkey was supposed to be in the frame for 2028, but it looks as now Italy and Turkey are going to jointly apply to host the 2032 competition.
Right.
And I think it's interesting from UEFA's point of view, because I think it's fair to say they weren't particularly impressed with the final in 2021. Could we go back where everybody who turned up appeared to have gone bugle crazy, and I'll say no more than that. And the behaviour of many people was embarrassing, and stewards were hurt.
Beyond embarrassing, Kieran. It was shocking. It was shameful.
Yeah.
It was horrible. Yeah.
So I think there will be a view by UEFA is we've got to make sure you get your house in order. There'll also be questions asked as to what will happen to the police. Now, we are actually interviewing Mark Roberts, who's head of policing in football, in a couple of weeks. So, perhaps we can have a chat with him. And I met Mark a few weeks ago when I was talking for Interpol and a few of the other police authorities. And he's a very affable guy. So, it'd be interesting to see what he thinks. A, what went wrong in 2021, and B, what's going to happen in 2028. And again, I was fortunate enough to see the Lionesses win last year, and you couldn't get a bigger contrast in terms of two finals involving England back to back. In effect, it's taking place at the same stadium. But it's great. It's great how the tournament's going to be organised in terms of, will anybody get automatic qualification? Because if you've got effectively the home nations and the Republic of Ireland, that's an awful lot of slots which could potentially be taken up.
Of course,
but I've not found out the exact details with regards to that as yet.
Well, we'll wait till the decision is made, Kieran, then we'll look into the financial details in... damn, I've said details, so I can't say more detail now. Curses. I'm looking forward to talking to Mark Roberts. Although my wife pointed out to me, Ali, that he wasn't in charge of policing through the 80s, so perhaps best not have a go at him for all the problems we had there. I'm sorry to add to your workload, Kieran, but can I just ask you a question for our next questions pod?
Yes,
and it's,
okay.
And it's related to major tournaments, because somebody sidled up to me I've worked out most people either sidle up to me or loom over me these days. I know by the way they approach me that they've got a football finance question I can't answer. And somebody said that they'd been very interested in what you had to say about the financial costs of a tournament, of a World Cup, especially the knock-on long-term effects of a World Cup tournament. And he wondered whether we could compare that to the cost of an Olympics and what was left behind as a legacy financially when a country hosted the Olympics. So I said, I haven't got a fucking clue, mate, but I know somebody who might. I might ask the Baroness. I'll tell you what, if you tell the Baroness I'll give her some inside information on Fred, and then she might give you 10 minutes to do some research on this.
Right.
That'll work, won't it? Yeah. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution to the pod as well, that'd be very kind of you, and you can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And I apologise, obviously my question will jump right to the head of the queue for next Monday's questions pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you for all the feedback. Thank you for getting in contact. And you did seem to like the Nostalgia Show, although I have received quite a detailed email, somebody pointing out a significant number of errors in which I've made in terms of the Sky deal in 1992. But that's fantastic, because I can only learn from, I always take criticism as a positive, because if I learn more, then that's great. But I think it's testament.
Yeah, I think I can guess who sent you that email.
Oh, right.
I'm not implying it was me, by the way, but obviously.
No.
Okay, that's interesting. Yes, we're doing another Nostalgia Pod soon, by the way. Yeah,
we are. Yes. So that's absolutely fantastic. For those of you that support us on Patreon, remember, if you pay, I think it's £3 a month or more, then you get the opportunity to listen to the show advert free. But there's another way in which you can support the show, and that's to go onto your app and to give us a review. By all accounts, it doesn't matter what you say. So you could even write in the review, you would rather have the show presented by Edwina Curry and the Cheeky Girls. And I've got no idea how that would potentially end up.
Oh, dear. That'd be an interesting one. Edwina Curry was rather rude to me once. Cheeky Girls. The Cheeky Girls I met when one of them was going out with your man, Lembit Opik.
Opik, yes.
Yes, and they both turned up, and it was right. He didn't seem to know which one he was going out with. No, Edwina Curry. I once she did "Have I Got News for You" when I was a guest on it years and years and years ago. And the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, I presume you're one of those gay lefty comics, are you?" And to this day, I still regret not saying, "Well, if you're the alternative, sweetheart, then yes, I am." She was. Let's just say she wasn't the most pleasant person I've ever met, and she wasn't at home to John Major jokes. Who would have thought? Bye, everybody. Oh, before I go, I've meant to say I've got a one-word teaser to drop in. I don't know what it means, but there should be some dramatic music here while I say Discord.
Oh,
there you go. That's it. I don't know what it means, but I've said it.
Okay.
All right. That's the sort of sloppy ending that Radio Times indicates to me they don't listen to this pod, Kieran.
Yes. There'll be Discord news coming up soon. Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.